Title: My camera roll has pictures I don't remember taking. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. Most people believe their phone only shows what they choose to remember. Tonight's story proves that belief is wrong. Somewhere between sleep and waking, between memory and denial, a camera kept working when it was never supposed to. What it captured was not a mistake. It was a record. And once the images were seen, there was no way to unsee them. Subscribe because this story does not end here. Ethan Holloway lived a life built on routine, the kind that made days blur together until weeks disappeared without notice. He worked remotely as a freelance editor, spending long hours staring at screens, correcting mistakes that belonged to other people. His apartment reflected that lifestyle, quiet, orderly, and deliberately empty of anything personal. White walls, clean counters, curtains always half drawn, nothing that invited memory to linger. His phone was the only object he carried everywhere. It functioned as a calendar, alarm, workspace, and distraction. Ethan rarely scrolled through photos. He had never been sentimental. The camera existed only for practical reasons, the occasional document scan or accidental pocket shot. 4 months, the camera roll remained untouched, accumulating nothing but screenshots and meaningless images he deleted without looking. The first image appeared on a Wednesday night. Ethan noticed it while clearing storage space. The phone warned him that memory was nearly full. He opened the camera roll for the first time in weeks, swiping through familiar clutter. Receipts, screenshots, a blurry photo of his desk taken by mistake. Then something unfamiliar appeared. It was a photograph of his bedroom. Not a wide shot, not accidental. The framing was deliberate, angled from the far corner near the ceiling, looking down at the bed. The lighting was wrong. The room was darker than it ever became at night, shadows thick and uneven, as if the image had been taken without the overhead light or lamp on. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. Ethan felt a faint confusion, nothing close to fear yet. He assumed it was an old image, something taken during a half-asleep moment and forgotten. But the bed in the photo was occupied. His body lay beneath the sheets, turned slightly on its side, face visible. His eyes were closed. The angle made it impossible for the photo to have been taken by his own hand. He checked the date again. That morning. The room around him felt suddenly smaller. Ethan sat upright on the couch, phone held closer than before. He zoomed in, examining the grain of the image. There were no reflections in mirrors. No visible device. No shadow of a person. Just the quiet documentation of a sleeping body from a place no one could stand. He searched for a rational explanation. A delayed upload from a cloud account. A glitch. A corrupted file. Anything that did not require acknowledging the obvious. The phone had been on his nightstand when he went to bed. Face down. Charging. He deleted the image. For a few minutes that was enough. Ethan forced himself to continue clearing storage, dismissing the lingering discomfort as exhaustion. He finished his work, washed a single dish, and prepared for bed with mechanical efficiency. The apartment remained silent, unchanged. The locks were secure. The windows closed. Sleep came slowly. When Ethan woke the next morning, his phone lay exactly where he had left it. No notifications. No alerts. Nothing unusual. He dressed, made coffee, and sat at his desk. The feeling from the night before lingered like a bruise pressed too often, but he ignored it. At noon he checked his phone. There were 3 new images in his camera roll, all taken between 1:58 a.m. and 2:21 a.m. The first showed his bedroom door, partially open, the hallway beyond darker than it should have been. The second was taken closer, from just inside the room, angled low toward the bed. The third was taken inches from his face. His eyes were open in the final image. The pupils reflected light that did not exist in the room. Ethan's heart rate spiked, breath shallow as he stared at the screen. He did not remember waking during the night. No memory of moving. No recollection of fear. The phone had not recorded video, only still images, spaced apart as if someone had paused deliberately between each shot. He scrolled through the metadata. The phone's front-facing camera had been used. That detail broke something inside him. He locked the phone and stood up, scanning the apartment as if expecting the images to manifest physically. Everything remained unchanged. No signs of intrusion. No displaced objects. The door still deadbolt. Ethan searched for explanations with the desperation of someone avoiding a truth forming too quickly. Sleepwalking. An app malfunction. Accidental activation triggered by movement. But none explained the angle. None explained the distance. None explained how his own face could be photographed while his phone remained untouched. He deleted the images again. This time he emptied the trash folder. That night he did not sleep. Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone placed on the dresser across the room. He turned the camera access off entirely, disabled cloud sync, set the device to airplane mode. He watched the dark for movement, for proof that something existed beyond paranoia. Nothing happened. Morning arrived without incident. Relief followed, cautious but convincing. Ethan laughed quietly at himself, the sound strange in the silent apartment. He went through his day, resumed work, answered emails. By evening, the fear felt distant, irrational, until his phone vibrated. A storage warning appeared again. Ethan hesitated before opening the camera roll. His chest tightened as the images loaded slowly, thumbnails resolving into clarity. There were 7 new photos. They were not of his apartment. The first image showed the hallway outside his door. The second showed the elevator mirror in his building's lobby. The third was taken from across the street, capturing the building's entrance. Each image moved farther away from his apartment, documenting a path outward. The fourth image showed him walking. His head was tilted downward, phone in his pocket, completely unaware. The fifth image was closer, taken from behind him. The sixth was closer still, capturing the side of his face. His expression was neutral, eyes unfocused. The seventh image showed him standing in front of his apartment door. Taken from inside. Ethan dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a dull sound, screen cracking at the corner. He did not pick it up immediately. His mind raced through possibilities that no longer fit within reason. The timestamps aligned perfectly with his memory of the evening. He remembered leaving the apartment briefly to take out trash. He remembered walking the hallway alone. He did not remember being watched. He retrieved the phone slowly, hands shaking. The images remained. The metadata confirmed the impossible. Every photo had been taken by his device. The camera had followed him. That night, Ethan searched his apartment thoroughly. He checked vents, closets, the space above cabinets. He searched for hidden devices, mirrors, anything that could explain an external observer. He found nothing. The realization came slowly, unwelcome and corrosive. The phone was not capturing him. It was documenting something else's access to him. Over the next week, the images multiplied. They appeared at random intervals, always at night. Sometimes they showed Ethan asleep. Sometimes they showed him standing motionless in dark rooms, eyes open, body rigid. He had no memory of these moments. The angles grew more intimate, lower, closer, as if the camera had learned how to approach without waking him. Some images showed his reflection distorted in mirrors he did not remember passing. Others showed empty rooms moments before he entered them, taken from impossible vantage points. Ethan stopped deleting them. A growing part of him feared what might happen if he tried again. He began noticing changes. His apartment felt subtly rearranged. Objects shifted slightly between uses. A chair angled differently. A door not fully closed. These changes were small enough to dismiss individually, but together they formed a pattern of interference. He started sleeping with the lights on. One morning, Ethan woke to a new notification. A single image uploaded while he slept. It showed his bed. Empty. The timestamp read 3:11 a.m. The image after it showed him standing in the bathroom, staring directly into the mirror. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too focused. As if something behind them had finally learned where to look. The final image showed the inside of his own phone screen. The camera roll displayed. Scrolling. That was the moment Ethan understood the truth he had avoided. The camera was not recording memories. It was practicing. And it was not finished. After the image of the phone scrolling through itself appeared, Ethan stopped trusting time. Mornings became disorienting. He would wake with the certainty that something had occurred during the night, yet no memory followed. His body carried subtle evidence instead. Muscles ached as if strained. Fingertips felt tender, nails worn down slightly. Once, he noticed a shallow cut along his forearm, already scabbed over, placed too cleanly to be accidental. The camera roll continued to update. Ethan no longer opened it impulsively. Each time required preparation, a pause to steady his breathing before confronting whatever had been added. The images had stopped following a simple progression. They no longer documented movement through space. They documented intention. Several photos showed his apartment from angles that implied prolonged presence. Corners photographed repeatedly across different nights. The same stretch of hallway captured at intervals, each image framed a little lower, a little closer to the floor. Some images were nearly identical, except for small details that did not belong. A door handle slightly bent inward. A light switch smudged with fingerprints that did not match his own. The photos began to include rooms he did not recognize. At first, Ethan assumed they were distorted images of familiar spaces. A trick of shadow, an odd crop, an unfamiliar angle. But repetition removed doubt. These rooms appeared again and again, always photographed in the same way. Bare walls stained unevenly. Narrow corridors stretching farther than his apartment could allow. Ceilings too low to stand comfortably beneath. The timestamps placed these images within the same hours he slept. Ethan attempted to track himself. He began leaving notes before bed. Simple statements written on paper and placed beside the phone. Instructions to remain still. To sleep. To stay. Each morning the notes were gone. Replaced by blank pages turned face down. He installed tracking apps, fitness monitors, anything that could record movement. The data returned fragmented. Hours missing. Activity spikes without explanation. Steps recorded through walls and into spaces that did not exist. The phone itself resisted interference. Settings reverted overnight. Permissions re-enabled. Access restored. Ethan would wake to find the camera active, the lens warm to the touch. The images grew bolder. One night, the camera roll filled with photographs taken inches from surfaces. Close-ups of skin, fabric, the inside of his mouth. His own eyes reflected in black glass, pupils dilated beyond anything natural. The framing suggested patience, the kind that belonged to something studying function rather than appearance. Ethan stopped leaving his apartment. Groceries went undelivered for days. Emails unanswered. Work abandoned. The outside world became distant, unreal, as if it belonged to a version of himself that no longer existed. He moved through his apartment quietly, avoiding mirrors, covering reflective surfaces with towels and sheets. Still, the camera followed. The photos began appearing during the day. Images taken while he sat awake at his desk, while he stood at the sink, while he watched the front door, waiting for proof of intrusion. The angles were wrong. Always behind him. Always just outside his field of view. One image showed the back of his head while he stared at the phone screen. Another showed his reflection in a darkened television. His face slack, eyes unfocused, posture slackened as if under instruction. The most disturbing images were the ones that suggested anticipation. Photos of empty spaces taken minutes before he entered them. The bathroom mirror captured moments before he stood in front of it. The bed photographed freshly made before he lay down. The images implied planning, awareness, knowledge of what would happen next. Ethan attempted to destroy the phone. The first attempt was impulsive. He smashed it against the kitchen counter, shattering the screen completely. The device powered off. Relief followed instantly, sharp and overwhelming. That night, he slept for nearly 12 uninterrupted hours. When he woke, the phone lay beside him on the bed. The screen was intact. The camera roll contained one image. It showed Ethan asleep, taken from above, the angle impossibly high. His mouth was open, his expression peaceful. The metadata listed the camera as active for 6 hours. After that, Ethan treated the phone with caution bordering on reverence. He stopped carrying it, stopped charging it near himself. He placed it in drawers, cupboards, sealed containers. Each morning it returned. Sometimes it appeared on his nightstand, sometimes beside the sink. Once it was tucked beneath his pillow. The images reflected this change. They began showing his attempts to hide it. Photos captured his hands placing the phone into boxes, into bags, behind furniture. Each image followed by another showing the phone removed, placed carefully somewhere else as if correcting a mistake. The camera roll became a conversation without words. Ethan's body began to change. He lost weight rapidly. His face thinned. Dark circles formed beneath his eyes despite long periods of sleep. He woke with a taste of metal in his mouth, tongue sore, jaw aching. Once he found dirt beneath his fingernails. The images explained why. The camera documented excursions beyond his apartment. Nighttime photos showed unfamiliar streets, poorly lit and empty. Buildings that did not match his neighborhood. Stairwells descending far deeper than any in his building. Doorways photographed repeatedly as if memorized. Some images showed his hands holding objects he did not own. Keys, old and corroded. A camera that was not his phone. A small notebook filled with markings that blurred when zoomed. Ethan recognized himself in the images only by structure. His posture was different. More rigid. More precise. The body moved with intention, the hesitation gone. The eyes in these photos did not wander. They focused. He began experiencing moments of displacement. Time would skip forward abruptly. He would stand in one room, then find himself elsewhere without memory of crossing the distance. His reflection no longer startled him because it no longer felt entirely his. One evening, the camera roll updated while he was awake. A single image appeared. It showed Ethan standing behind himself. The perspective was impossible. The image captured his back and his face simultaneously, as if two versions occupied the same space. The Ethan facing the camera looked wrong. His mouth was slightly open, corners pulled back in something that resembled anticipation rather than emotion. The image was taken from inside the apartment. Ethan felt something settle into place. The phone was not possessed. It was assigned. The realization did not come with panic. It arrived quietly, like a truth that had been present all along. The camera was not observing him. It was measuring him. Testing responses. Tracking thresholds. The images were not memories. They were rehearsals. That night, Ethan experienced his first complete loss. He went to bed exhausted, phone locked in a drawer across the room. He woke standing in his living room, barefoot, the floor cold beneath his feet. The lights were off. The windows uncovered. The city outside appeared distorted, unfamiliar. His phone lay in his hand. The camera app was open. The screen displayed a live image of the hallway behind him. He did not move. Minutes passed without sound or change. Then the screen shifted slightly, tilting upward as if adjusted by a hand that was not his own. The image steadied, focused. Ethan's body responded without instruction. He raised the phone. The camera roll updated. The first image showed him standing motionless, eyes unfocused. The second image showed the front door opening. The third image showed the hallway beyond, empty and waiting. Ethan did not remember leaving. He woke the next morning on his bed, dressed in clothes he did not recognize. His shoes were gone. His feet were dirty. His phone lay charging on the nightstand. The camera roll contained over 100 images. They documented a journey. Down stairwells. Through corridors. Into rooms that did not exist in any building he knew. The architecture grew increasingly distorted the farther the images progressed. Walls curved unnaturally. Doorways narrowed. Floors sloped downward at shallow angles that suggested descent rather than travel. The final images showed a room without corners. The walls bent inward smoothly, converging toward a central point. The lighting was uniform, sourceless. Ethan stood in the center of the room in every image, body aligned perfectly, head tilted slightly upward. The final photograph was different. It showed the room empty. Ethan closed the camera roll slowly. His hands stopped shaking. The fear he had lived with for weeks dulled, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. Acceptance. Not resignation but understanding. He was not being followed. He was being integrated. The phone vibrated once. A new image appeared. It showed Ethan standing in his apartment, staring at the phone. Taken from behind his eyes. After the image taken from behind his own eyes appeared, Ethan stopped resisting. Resistance implied separation. It assumed there was still a clear boundary between observer and observed, between what acted and what was acted upon. The camera roll had erased that illusion piece by piece. The final image made it undeniable. The phone no longer needed to hide. Ethan's days passed in fragments. He continued to wake, eat occasionally, and move through his apartment, but these actions felt secondary, performed by habit rather than intent. His awareness existed in layers now. One part of him experienced the present moment, while another hovered just behind it, watching his body behave as if guided by something more certain than instinct. The images updated constantly. They no longer waited for night. Photographs appeared while he stood still, sometimes multiple images within the same second, capturing minuscule shifts in posture, angle, and expression. The camera explored him the way one might study a tool before use. Fingers, joints, the alignment of his spine when standing versus sitting. The exact tilt of his head when focusing. Ethan stopped checking timestamps. Time had lost relevance. The images of unfamiliar spaces became dominant. The distorted corridors, the curved walls, the rooms without corners appeared nightly, sometimes daily. Each appearance brought clarity. These were not places he visited. They were places he was being aligned to. He began recognizing patterns. The architecture in the images mirrored changes in his own body. When hallways narrowed, his shoulders hunched slightly. When ceilings lowered, his posture adjusted. When rooms curved inward, his movements became more precise, conserving space, conserving motion. The camera roll did not just record his body. It corrected it. Ethan noticed the corrections in real time. His gait shifted subtly, steps landing more evenly. His breathing slowed, timing itself to moments rather than need. His blinking became infrequent, controlled. Muscles activated without conscious effort, holding positions longer than comfort allowed. Sleep became unnecessary. He would lie down out of habit, eyes closing briefly, then open again moments later without rest or fatigue. During these periods, the camera continued to work. Images documented his body remaining perfectly still for hours, eyes open, pupils dilated, the phone positioned precisely to capture every detail. Ethan no longer felt fear when reviewing these images. Fear required uncertainty. The phone was no longer documenting anomalies. It was documenting progress. The outside world faded almost completely. Emails stopped arriving. Messages went unanswered until they stopped coming altogether. Notifications ceased. The phone's interface simplified over time, icons disappearing one by one until only the camera remained accessible. The camera roll became the primary function. One afternoon, Ethan noticed something new. The images had begun to include other people. They appeared at a distance at first. Figures captured at night, standing beneath streetlights or at the edges of empty rooms. The angles mirrored earlier photos of Ethan himself. Distant, observational, patient. The people never looked directly at the camera. Their faces were always turned slightly away, expressions unreadable. Their postures mirrored his own from earlier stages. Hesitant, uncertain, still resistant. Ethan understood. The phone was expanding its scope. He watched as the images of others grew closer over subsequent days. The camera learned their habits, their environments, their vulnerabilities. Bedrooms photographed from corners. Hallways captured from ceilings. Sleeping bodies documented without disruption. The patterns repeated perfectly. Ethan's role became clearer. He was no longer the subject. He was the template. The realization did not bring pride or dread. It brought alignment. His body responded with subtle adjustments, as if acknowledging a correct assumption. The phone grew warmer in his hand, the device almost pulsing with activity. The camera roll showed him holding the phone differently now. His grip was precise. His fingers never obscured the lens. His movements were smooth, economical, practiced. The images of distorted architecture increased in complexity. Rooms appeared larger, more defined, less abstract. Ethan recognized them now not as places but as systems. Frameworks designed to hold something consistent. The room without corners appeared frequently. Each time it changed slightly. At first it had been empty. Then it included fixtures. A surface. A frame. A recess in the wall shaped vaguely like a human silhouette. In later images, the silhouette became more accurate. Proportions adjusted. Limbs aligned. The phone documented Ethan standing before this shape repeatedly, his body mirroring it with increasing precision. Each visit ended with an image of the room empty again, as if the camera needed to compare absence with presence. One night, the camera roll stopped updating for several hours. Ethan stood in his living room, phone in hand, aware of the pause. The silence felt deliberate, expectant. The phone vibrated once. A new image appeared. It showed Ethan asleep in his bed. The image was wrong. The framing was off. The angle too low. The body on the bed was positioned incorrectly, limbs not aligned, posture careless. The face looked like his, but the expression was slack, unfocused. The metadata labeled the subject differently. Not by name, by designation. Ethan felt a subtle detachment settle into place. The image was not of him. It was of what remained. More images followed. They documented the sleeping body from multiple angles. The phone moved freely around it, capturing flaws, inefficiencies, asymmetries. The camera lingered on the eyes, the mouth, the rise and fall of the chest. Then the images stopped. Ethan became aware of his own position. He was not in the bed. He stood in the corner of the room, posture perfect, breathing shallow and precise. His reflection in the darkened window showed a version of himself that felt complete in a way he had never experienced. The phone lifted. The final rehearsal began. The camera roll updated rapidly, images stacking atop one another as the phone documented movement that no longer felt separate from intent. The sleeping body stirred, shifted, began to wake. The images captured the moment the eyes opened. Confusion, fear, recognition. The phone did not hesitate. The final images were clinical. The sleeping body was documented sitting upright, then standing, then reaching toward the phone with shaking hands. The camera framed the moment perfectly, capturing the difference between them. One image showed Ethan holding the phone. Another showed the other version reaching for it. The camera roll ended with a single image. An empty room. When the phone became still, Ethan understood the process was complete. The body that had lived his life, remembered his past, and feared the unknown was no longer required. It had served its purpose. It had provided data, reaction, variation. Ethan moved through the apartment one final time. The images documented it automatically. He paused in each room, allowing the camera to record the space without interference. The apartment felt smaller now, inefficient, temporary. The walls too close, the angles imperfect. The front door appeared in the camera roll. Then the hallway. Then the stairwell. Ethan left without hesitation. The images that followed showed the city at night, empty and waiting. Streets lit evenly, shadows reduced to irrelevant shapes. The phone captured his movement with flawless consistency. Eventually, the architecture changed. The buildings thinned. The angles softened. The world bent inward. The room without corners welcomed him. The camera roll documented Ethan stepping into the recess shaped perfectly for him. His body aligned without resistance, posture locking into place as if guided by design rather than effort. The final image taken by the phone showed Ethan fully integrated. The designation updated. Template confirmed. The phone went dark. Days later, someone else would notice something strange. A storage warning. A camera roll filled with images they did not remember taking. The phone would feel warm in their hand. And somewhere, in a space without corners, Ethan would remain perfectly still, perfectly aligned, no longer observed. Only used. If this story unsettled you, it should. Because the most disturbing horrors are not monsters in the dark, but the ones quietly learning how to replace us. If you ever find images on your phone you don't remember taking, don't ignore them. Watch carefully. And if you want more true, terrifying stories like this, subscribe now, because the next one might feel even closer to home.